All right, week 3 waivers. A lot of players getting injured. Here's who we think you guys should pick up for week 3. First of all, we have Roschon Johnson, who is owned in 50% of leagues. So you're going to want to check on these guys around 50% just to make sure they're not rostered. If they are out there, you should absolutely pick up Roschon Johnson. D'Onta Foreman, healthy scratch this week, which means it's been limited now to a 2-man backfield, which is good for Roschon. The 3-man sort of split looked really bad for him, but now that Foreman is looking like the clear third man and even being a healthy scratch, Johnson has a big opportunity here. As a rookie, it's only his second game, and even though he's still behind Khalil Herbert in snaps and carries, he's getting a lot of receiving work, and he should be ascending. These rookie running backs, they really have their best games the second half of the season anyway, so he's a player you want to stash. I'm not really looking to start him unless I absolutely have to, but I think he has a lot of upside down the stretch.
Yep. Next up would be Nico Collins, another guy who's 55% owned. So he's likely not available in your league, but you got to check anyways. He should be owned in every single league. He has 20 targets over his first 2 weeks, 266 yards, and he's 5th in the NFL in receiving yards. So just do a quick check. If he's on your waiver, pick him up.
Yeah, no brainer. For Fab, I think that I would spend a decent amount on Roschon just as not a ton, but just as a stash. But Nico Collins is a guy you can immediately go in and start. I think if he's available, he would be my number one priority probably.
I agree.
Next up, Zack Moss, another guy that I think you could spend a little bit of Fab on if you're going to start him. So 56% rostered, so he probably isn't, but you should absolutely go check because he saw 98% of the snaps. That is elite as far as a workload. We really don't see any players. He's probably only second to Christian McCaffrey last week, who got 100%. To see over 80% these days is really rare. So regardless of the situation, where he's not super efficient, but he's not as bad as the other guys on their team. So while Jonathan Taylor is out, he should be valuable for fantasy. He can definitely fall into the end zone. 18 carries and 4 targets with a touchdown last week. He was injured. He was still coming off an injury the first game, so he didn't get to play. But this first week as the starter, he was the absolute bell cow.
Next up, so this is Josh Reynolds, the first guy that's probably available in most leagues. He's only 21% owned. Last week, he had 5 catches for 66 yards and 2 touchdowns. In his first 2 games, he's had 7 and 6 targets, which in this offense is a pretty high number of targets. They're a good offense. Amon-Ra potentially has turf toe. We haven't been confirmed of how severe it is or
if it even is
if he'll
turf
miss
toe.
time.
We don't
because he was able to finish the game, so that's good. But if he does get injured with turf toe, if that's what it is, sometimes it can take 3 to 4 weeks to fully heal. And if he is to miss time, then Josh Reynolds is the number one. He's had 80% of the snaps over the past 2 weeks, which means he's their clear wide receiver 2. And Jameson Williams still doesn't come back until week 7. So that gives you a solid still 5-ish weeks of what should be solid, wide receiver 2 production.
Yeah, again, we have no clear reports on Amon-Ra's injury, so keep track of the news to see what it is. What we do know is that he got an insert into his shoe, which is very, very common for turf toe. But the report said that it was cramping and he went back in the game, so we're going to see if he did, in fact, sprain his toe, essentially, which is what turf toe is, which could be bad and would be good for Josh Reynolds' production. However, it could just be something else, so definitely pay attention to Amon-Ra's news there. All right, and we did want to announce that we have picked a winner to win the Keenan Allen signed jersey, and the winner is Earl Blue 4836. Congratulations! Thank you all for entering and subscribing and leaving comments and all that good stuff. We'd appreciate it if you did subscribe. Only about 3% of you guys who are watching right now are subscribed. Really help out the channel. Appreciate it. Next up, Tutu Atwell. Obviously not their number one guy, even with Cooper Kupp out, but there's a lot to go around with Matt Stafford. He looks actually pretty good this year, and he really focuses his targets on a few guys. Obviously, Puka Nacua is getting the vast majority of the work there, but there's enough to go around, and Tutu has been pretty good so far. And he's seeing a lot of the snaps, 94%. He's got a 19.1% target share so far, which is okay. It's pretty good. Definitely worth rostering. But in that offense where they seem to be throwing a lot, that's decently valuable when Kupp is out, and we don't know how long that will be. He's currently 7th in the NFL in receiving yards, which is pretty crazy. This is before the Monday night game, so he's definitely worth rostering, and I think you could flex him in a pinch.
Next up is going to be Matt Breida. This is a speculative ad. Last game, Saquon Barkley did get hurt in about the final minutes of the game. They said it is a sprained ankle. They think he avoided the worst of it, so it might be more mild. But they do play on Thursday this week, so 3-day turnaround. It's probably going to be hard for Saquon to make it back in that short of a span on a sprained ankle. So Matt Breida would be, next man up in that offense. We haven't really seen Breida fully healthy while Saquon has not been healthy at the same time. So it's probably going to be a timeshare, but I would imagine Breida at least leads that timeshare. Right. And at this point, if you're desperate, any running back that's getting touches is a running back that should be rostered. So I wouldn't blow a number one waiver priority on him. I wouldn't blow a bunch of fab on him, but right. I do think he's at least worth a speculative pickup just in case Saquon's injury is worse than we may think.
Now, I will say, if these other the running backs we've talked about before, Roschon and Zack Moss, they might be owned in your league, and he might be the guy you need. There's a lot of injuries going around, so you might have to go and add him. And I understand if that's the case. Like of the other guys that we're going to talk about, you can get a start out of him if Saquon misses, which probably with a Thursday game probably will miss one. Could get a second start out of him. We have seen Matt Breida once without Saquon, but it was just in Week 18 last year when they weren't playing their starters. So Saquon sat out, but so did a lot of the other starters. So it's hard to tell from that game anything, but I do think he'll lead the backfield. Not blowing a ton of fab, but again, it's totally situational. All right, next up, Hunter Henry, the tight end 1 so far on the year, apparently. That's pretty crazy. Depending on your scoring format, obviously, but he pulled in a touchdown in 2 weeks. 6 and 7 targets is decent. I mean, tight end is messy. If he's out there, he absolutely should be owned at this point on somebody's team. Like if you don't have an Andrews or a Kelsey or a Hawkinson, I guess, yeah, you should probably roster him at this point.
Next up is Zach Ertz, who leads all tight ends in targets through 2 weeks at 18 targets, so that's 9 a game on average. He is only 17% owned, so he's likely going to be available in your league. This is like a floor play, especially in PPR. I wouldn't be interested in standard.
Right.
But in full PPR, if he gets 5 catches a game, throw in the random touchdown here or there, he could get you a solid floor, 6 to 12 points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's hard to get 10 points without getting a touchdown these days. So if you can get that out of Zach Ertz, that's really not that bad.
Yep.
Next up, Robert Woods. So this Texans offense is actually, it's pretty good. We talked about Nico Collins before, but there might be enough volume to go around here. And so far through 2 weeks, he's been pretty good for fantasy. So he's seen 10 and 9 targets in his first 2 games. And the Texans look to be behind a lot, so they should be in a sort of passing game script for the most part. I don't know exactly what their schedule looks like, but I imagine most games they probably will be favored to lose, or the other team will be favored. And CJ Stroud actually looks pretty good. So the passing volume has been there so far through 2 weeks, which is pretty surprising. But 242 and then 384 passing yards for CJ Stroud with no interceptions. And they are third in the NFL in pass attempts, which is also pretty impressive. I will say the higher priority ad as far as just trending so far is Tank Dell. So Tank Dell is more added. It's another player I do think you can roster, and it's not super clear if he will become their number 2 target. But what do you think about adding Tank Dell versus Robert Woods in this offense?
Yeah, I like them both in this offense. They're both high volume plays. Tank Dell is a rookie, so sometimes it takes him a couple games to come on, and who knows, he may later in the season supplant Robert Woods as that number 2 behind Nico Collins.
Right.
To me, if I have to start a player this week, I'm picking up Robert Woods just based on the target volume. If this is more like a season-long hold, you might as well go Tank Dell at that point just because he will have more long-term upside if he hits his peak.
But even if you need a start, and like if you could see yourself needing a start, like if you're kind of thin at receiver and maybe in the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'd still probably go Woods there just for the immediate. I feel like it's a little more guaranteed. But Tank Dell has been decent as well, so I think both should be rostered.
Agreed. So this next session is going to be for stashes / very deep league flexes. So first up is going to be Jaylen Warren. He's 46% owned, so in the deeper leagues, he probably isn't available. But if he is, he's a good stash. We are recording before Monday night, so if he gets hurt or if Najee gets hurt, etc., we don't have that information yet. But he is a stash, a high upside handcuff. If something were to happen to Najee, then his value would increase.
Yeah, and I think he's just that. Like, you're not picking him up to start him. He's really there just to add depth to your team in case something happens. He's got a lot of upside. You want that on your bench. Next up is Jayden Reed for the Green Bay Packers. Had a pretty good week, with a touchdown. So, people might go rush to add him. I'm not spending a lot on Jayden Reed just because of a good outing. He did see over 50% of the snaps. However, if I need somebody to start, he's not somebody I'm looking to add. Really, the reason that I would add him is just if you have an extra slot on your bench and you don't really know who to add. I think he's got a decent amount of upside. The offense looks better than maybe we expected. Jordan Love is pretty good. And we don't – it's not 100% certain that it's going to be Romeo Doubs as the number 2 target throughout the season. And Jayden Reed with, middle of the second round draft capital, I do think they will give him a chance. And if he continues to impress, he could earn his way into some more targets.
I agree. So last up, this is going to bring up Craig Reynolds, who I believe is 0 or 1% owned, so he's available just about everywhere. This is a super deep league flex stash.
Or desperation running back.
Desperation play. With David Montgomery missing what sounds like at least multiple weeks, and them being so weary of giving Gibbs the entire workload, I do think Craig Reynolds will be involved to a certain extent. I think he could definitely see 10 to 12-ish touches in that range, with Gibbs receiving the rest of them. But on this Lions offense and the way they like to use their running backs near the end zone, if he gets 10 to 12 touches, he could be a solid, 10-point flex play for a deeper league. So I think if you're absolutely stuck, like in some of my leagues, I've lost David Montgomery and J.K. Dobbins the past 2 weeks, so I'm kind of
Saquon going down. People are going to be needy at running back. I don't feel good about this. It could be a bad start, but there might not be many options on your waiver. We wanted to give an option for the people in those deeper leagues or dire situations. Again, I do think that the Lions will plan to get Gibbs more involved. Obviously, they went into this week planning to have David Montgomery, so it makes sense that when David Montgomery went out, Reynolds took in that role. So maybe that's what it was, but again, he could definitely see some goal line work, and that's the upside that you're going to have to chase if you absolutely need to, just to make it clear. Again, this is recording before Monday Night Football, so if there are any pickups that arise from those games, we will leave a pinned comment, so check that right now. If we don't have anything there, then we don't have any new ads, but we will provide information there as well as how much we think you should bid, like how high priority they are. Anyways, thank you guys for tuning in. We've been the Fantasy Bros, and we're out.